Save your breath and cure your parts. Hey, look, she wants a heck of 2 roof lights. The stylish house frame furniture. And scarlet cushions with matching shark by cover. Yeah. Right. It's just terrible parcel to the party with the blue bags. Have I made myself clear, bags?
Yeah, that's perfectly clear, Mickey, yeah. Just give me 1 minute to confer with my colleague. Did you understand a single word of what he just said?
Welcome back, everybody, to Movie Fight Club, where every episode we duke it out about whether or not that week's movie is good or not. I'm one of your hosts, Mandy, and I think Snatch is one of the most beautifully chaotic movies I've ever seen. One might even say it snatched my heart.
No. No. Stop the podcast. I want to get off. And I'm Matthew, and I think Snatch is something derogatory about snatches, and let's not go there, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, this is going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one.
Snatch.
Snatch is a 2000 British-American crime comedy film written and directed by Guy Ritchie. It is an unrelated follow-up to his first film, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The ensemble cast features Jason Statham, Brad Pitt, Alan Ford, Benicio Del Toro, and Vinnie Jones. And in case you aren't sure what this movie is about, since I had no idea based on just the name, I mean, it is kind of a heist movie, but IMDb says unscrupulous boxing promoters, violent bookmakers, a Russian gangster, incompetent amateur robbers, and supposedly Jewish jewelers fight to track down a priceless stolen diamond. I mean, the chaos just bleeds out of that sentence.
Yeah, really hard to define and talk about what this film is about. I would have my opening salvo as it's a farce. In some ways, the tradition of older British films, where it's just ridiculous things are happening, almost where you might have bedroom farces.
Okay.
And, you know, people going into the wrong room and shenanigans happen and all this sort of thing. It's got some of that going on. Mistaken identities and incompetent people. And it's supposed to be fun and light and jolly, ha ha ha, crime comedy. Ha 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 ha.
I love it when you do that.
Yes. He's hitting that dog with a stick. Ha ha ha. It's funny.
There was a dead dog on the ground.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, it has very dark moments. There's definitely an element of dark humor to this.
I'm not sure it's dark humor. I think it wants to walk a line where it's got the darkness of the underground, the underground boxing, the traveller community, the dog fighting, the general crime and shenanigans against each other, coupled with the humour that comes from the comedy and the mistaken identity and the incompetent people and so on and all this sort of thing. And I think it wants to walk that line somewhere. And you know, get away with the darkness because it's got lightness. But Bricktop, there's no point at which you ever see his point in this or ever side with him. He is just supposed to be awful from the very outset, and it goes too far too early, because every time we return to him, I'm like, oh yeah, thank you for reminding me this is an awful person.
Right, I think we're like 7 minutes in and he's describing, we're watching him in the pig farm. Right, after Turkish has told us that the rumor is that you'll end up in his pig farm. And it's so early in the movie that we see that. Yeah, you're not wrong, but there's a lot about this movie to enjoy.
Okay.
He says expect.
Go ahead.
All right. So one of the things that I like about this movie is that when it was over, actually kind of felt like I'd seen 3 different movies in one. We had Turkish and Tommy's story.
Mm-hmm.
We had Saul and Vincent's story.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Avi's story.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. And the interesting thing about that is Bricktop was almost a bigger character than almost any of those, but none of the stories were his because he intertwined into all of them. Like, he is the common thread between all of the different narratives that we're seeing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
In this movie.
Mm.
And I feel like the story, God, it was confusing as right? Like, you almost didn't know which way was up or down with this movie, with all of the different, we had like 12 different characters. Like, in the beginning, so one of the first things they do is, like, one of Guy Ritchie's styles is the freeze frame.
Yeah.
And so there was this montage at the beginning of introducing all of the characters to us with a freeze frame.
Mm-hmm.
Their name showed up on the screen. And, like, we were halfway through it, and I'm sitting there like, how am I supposed to remember who all of these characters are by name? Like, there's no way, right? But the thing about it is that Guy Ritchie trusts his audience to get there with him. Like, he's telling this horribly convoluted story with so many twists and turns, but he gets us there at the end. Like, by the time you get to the end, everything that we've already seen makes sense. It's just doesn't necessarily make sense while we're going through it, but we get there. And I really enjoy that about it, because then you can look back on it and be like, oh, I understand why he did that. Or, you know, these 3 seemingly unrelated movies, like the 3 different that I said that we were doing, like, they do all come together at the end.
Okay.
It is very similar to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you may remember that I hated that movie.
Okay.
This movie I would watch again.
Oh, interesting.
This movie, Guy Ritchie learned from the first one, I think, and he executed this one so much better. The storytelling was better. The performances. Dude, Bricktop, Alan Ford, absolutely terrifying. This is a comedy, but he was terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not really given any of the humor. And where it is humorous, it's humorous because he's being so dark at everyone.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. 100%. God, I don't know. Like, there's so much good about this Brad Pitt's performance. If I didn't have subtitles on, I would have no idea what the hell he said.
Which is the point.
Like,
so
I know. Completely spot on. It was amazing. I mean, Jason Statham does what Jason Statham does. I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay. I mean, Bricktop doesn't intersect with Avi's story. He intersects because Sol promises him the diamond, but not really at all there. It is his story with Turkish, and then he gets robbed by the guys that Avi hires. So there's, you know, there is a link there, but I don't think he intersects with that story. Okay. And the thing that I would say, you talked about how, you know, it makes sense at the end and you can follow everything through, but you're not necessarily there at the time. It's so close. It's so close to me being able to say, yeah, totally agree with you. But it's not quite there because it's just so intricately plotted and everything. You're right. There's, you know, they knock this guy out and they rob this place and this guy recognizes this guy, so they're able to go and get him, and he then promises him the diamonds, that then does that thing. Until you get to the end. And it's one of those things of, and then they're not sure how to wrap it up. How do we move on from here? How do we close out this story? Because if Avi gets the diamond, Sol's still in trouble, and if Sol gets the diamond, then what's going on with Avi and Frank? And just all the stuff going on. So the conclusion of the story is the dog eats the diamond. And Avi shoots Tony by mistake and flies back to America. That's terrible. That's the worst bit of writing ever. That's like, and then it was all a dream. And then the dog would not have eaten the diamond. The dog, I don't think, would have jumped up and grabbed it. And then when it's in his mouth, it would have gone like, oh, this is heavy and sharp. I'm going to put it down. Like,
I mean, they already set up this dog as, like, chewing everything. He swallowed the stupid squeaky toy. Like, he did not chew on this thing. He immediately went to town on trying to swallow this thing. Like, they set that up.
But it's a diamond. Dogs don't eat rocks. And this is a diamond. This is the toughest, sharpest rock there is. And no. And it's so weird because they've just been doing a whole thing of, oh, the dog must have eaten it. Well, go on then, open up the dog. Oh, steady on, Avi.
Now then, let's have a look, shall we? Tony?
What?
Look in the dog.
You mean look in the dog?
I mean, open him up.
Eating a baked beans? What do you mean open him up?
Which is quite good, quite funny. And then they go, oh no, the dog hasn't eaten it, we've got it here. So you're like, okay, there's going to be an actual... Oh no, the dog has eaten it. Well, what was the point of all that? It doesn't work. It's relying on random things happening. He shoots a gun everywhere and he happens to shoot Tony. Tony?
I actually really enjoyed that bit because you didn't see it coming.
Yeah, you wouldn't see it coming because it comes out of nowhere. It's a nothing thing that's like, okay, and then he flies back to America. Right, that's his story done. And now let's just solve this other bit.
But to have it, it's like you were set up that bullet-toothed Tony, right, got shot 6 times in one setting and didn't die and had gold cast made of the bullets that are in his teeth, right? Like, this guy doesn't die. He dodges bullets. That's what he does. To have the guy who's hired him randomly and accidentally shoot the gun across the room and have that be what takes him out. I loved it.
It's hard because Tony's cool. He's a really good character. He is an absolute step above what he got in Lockstock. Where what he was in Lockstock was, we've cast Vinnie Jones, and Vinnie Jones is going to do the Vinnie Jones thing that he's done playing for Wimbledon for all these years. And now he's going to come and do it in a film. And in this, he actually gets to act. He does that whole thing with his eyebrows. It's like, I've got Desert Storm, 0.50. And his eyebrows are just going up and down as he emphasizes the point to everyone. And then he gets shot. And we just don't see him. It's like, oh. Well, that's weird. That's a shame.
It was unexpected. It was an unexpected turn in the story, and I think that's why I liked it. Because, you know, I hate formulaic movies. And God, there was nothing in this movie that was formulaic.
No, you don't see any of it coming.
Like, it's impossible to have something this chaotic have a formula. And I think that's why I liked it.
And you said about performances. And Jason Statham doing what Jason Statham does. Which is... It was really interesting at the time. We said this in Lockstock. Like, that was really interesting, watching Jason Statham do this quite fast-talking, quite personable, charming guy. And being just a person, you might want to say. And in this, he is absolutely Jason Statham. Talking like this, and I'm going, I can't even remember any of his lines, but yeah, before the Germans get here, innit? Oh. And that was interesting at the time because it was so different from what he'd done before. And now it's like, oh, I've seen him do that in 20 or 30 films at this stage.
Right, but this was where he figured out kind of what his wheelhouse was. And I think that's why I like it. I mean, if he did it now, and he does do it now, it's boring.
Yeah.
But in the year 2000, it wasn't boring.
Yeah, no, this is boring now. This is a performance that's gotten worse over time. And the performance has stayed the same.
But this movie's from 2000.
It is. Performances. That's where we were, because you also mentioned Brad Pitt. Yeah, he's extraordinary in this.
You cannot tell me that he did a bad
He's extraordinary in this. You forget it's Brad Pitt.
Absolutely, yes you do.
In the same way, I couldn't forget it was Brad Pitt when I watched Fight Club. You know, Tyler Durden mocking male models looking a certain way. Well, one of the draws of this film is that Brad Pitt looks a certain way. And he takes his shirt off and you're like, oh, okay. Okay, he looks like that. As he did look in Fight Club, because this was the year after.
Yeah.
It's an incredible performance. It's so good. And it's so good when he's doing the boxing. It's really good.
It's so unlike anything we've seen from Brad Pitt before this or since this. You know, I really want to know who the dialect coach was that he sat down with to get that accent down, because he did it, and he did it really, really well.
Except that this film is filled with a slur every few lines against...
It is.
Not just the traveller community, but everyone. Everyone that could be offended is offended in this film. And possibly on purpose as well.
Yeah. I actually had to look up what to call this community because they only referred to it in pejorative terms. Yeah. And so I was actually very pleased that you first referred to them as a traveling community.
That's as
well done.
I understand it. I'm not, close to that community.
That's what I got. The Irish traveling community is what I saw when I looked up the slur that I don't want to say. But God, they said it so many times. And the one that they said the most is the one I had actually never heard before, because it's very clearly British slang, and I'm clearly not British. Clearly. I can't even do a bad British accent, so... but I can't imagine what it would be like to be British and to listen to that over and over and over again. And
that's then on top of the homophobic slurs and the slurs about people being women and so on. And it's almost pointed there's nothing about the black people in the film. So they sort of know there are lines they're not going to cross, but they'll cross everything else where they don't have that representation going on in the film. And this is Guy Ritchie, who's now part of the establishment. And
I honestly didn't notice any slurs against women.
I'm sure there's a whole thing, not slurs against men, the sort of toxic masculinity slurs. Vinnie Jones's diatribe about, you know exactly what I'm going into, and let's not get into that here.
Bricktop calling Tommy Turkish's lady friend. Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah. It's that side. That, not necessarily against women, but it is also toxic masculinity is about how things that are weak are womanly. Yeah, okay. Although I did enjoy Mickey's relationship with me, ma'am. Yeah.
That was nice. Great. Until they killed her. But
well, okay, so let's talk about the women in the film.
There's more than one.
4 women with speaking lines, I think. 2 are models who play Mike Reed's daughters.
Oh, yeah.
What was Mike Reed's character? Doug the Head. And let's just touch on Mike Reed ever so briefly. Mike Reed, who was Frank Butcher in EastEnders.
Hi, my name is Frank Butcher.
EastEnders is a long-running soap over here. It's been going for 6,332 episodes.
Holy crap.
And Mike Reed was in 781 of those episodes. He played Frank Butcher. So Mike Reed being in a film is almost wrong to me.
Okay.
Just wrong. He should not be on a cinema screen, but fine, he is.
Right.
He has twin daughters who are models and who get, let's say, 4 lines each in the film.
Wait, are they actually his daughters?
No.
Oh, okay. They just played his daughters. Okay.
There is the lady in the bookie shop.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about her.
Who's cool, who we like.
She is cool,
again, gets about 4
she stood
lines,
up to them, and
she's nice and clearly memorable. And there's is it Mickey? Mikey? Mickey's mum, who is fridged to motivate the final act of the film. Yes. So that's not good in and of itself. And then we said this about Lock, Stock, every single character in this film could have been a woman. And there are characters, particularly the pairing of Sol and... Is it Vinny?
Vinny. Vincent.
And Tyrone. Wouldn't it have been great if they'd been women? Just, one of these groups make it, they're the group of women doing this thing. But you could have had either of Turkish and Tommy, both of Turkish and Tommy, all of them.
It would have been awesome if one of Bricktop's enforcers was a woman. That would have been great. I'll give you that one. Absolutely. I will concede that one because I think the movie could have been better if they had included more women.
Because it wouldn't have changed the movie. But it would have stopped me
No.
criticizing it on this point and going, like, this is a massive sausage fest. You were going to talk editing.
John Harris is brilliant in his editing of this movie.
Okay.
The freeze frames, the chaos, the frenzied cuts of the fight scenes, going between slow-mo, stopping, going. It's just, it felt like it made you feel as if you were actually at the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had this like heart in my throat, intense feeling that you don't normally get just from sitting there watching a movie, right? That's the kind of adrenaline rush you get when you're in a place like that. And they managed to make me feel that, just the way the movie was cut together. The sounds, the way the sounds kind of went with it. I don't know. There aren't very many movies that look like this. Like they started, like Guy Ritchie's direction is it's clearly influenced the editing and the cinematography, right? Because it is stylistically very similar to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. But I think what Guy Ritchie wanted to accomplish there, he did accomplish here. Like he learned.
He clearly had the budget for it.
And he had a bigger budget and he got it done. And it was beautiful. Like I keep going back to, like, it's an odd phrase, but I want to call it beautifully chaotic. Like, and I know those two words don't really go together, but I can't think of another way to describe it. Right.
It's the stuff you're talking about with the boxing sequences and sometimes it's paused, sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's sped up, sometimes it's just a series of sort of staccato shots. It feels like when you remember a really intense night, when you've been to the club, to a big sporting event or something that's really like high emotion, high intensity for a long period, and you think back on it, and it is just a series of sequences like flash framing in your mind.
Right, yeah.
It's a really nice way to portray that.
Yes, yeah. I thought it was done really well. And as far as the cinematography goes, the way they used surveillance shots. Like the entire opening sequence of Frankie Four Fingers robbing the bank, jewelry store, whatever he robbed. I can't remember what it was. But like our perspective as the audience, that was entirely through surveillance shots. And then sporadically throughout the rest of the movie, we got a few more. Like when Boris showed up to Saul's pawn shop. Like the camera is on Saul's face, but we see Boris because he's in the surveillance screen behind Saul. So we see both of their faces, even though Saul's back is to the camera. Stuff like that. It's tiny little details, but it's perfection.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, it's a very well-made film. You can see the effort they went into it. Some of the I think about the things of Avi flying over, where you see him, what is it? Suitcase closed, car shut on a taxi, stamping a passport. He takes a PL, Concorde takes off, and it's just a series of like half-second shots. It's almost like proto Edgar Wright, Taika Waititi. When you think of Shaun of the Dead that did all of that sort of stuff, and Hot Fuzz that did that.
Yeah, they did.
But this, 10 years earlier, something like that. You can see the development of that style happening here. And that cast, you mentioned Benicio Del Toro as Frankie Four Fingers. Beautiful. When you think of what he brings to the collector, you can see it here. He's having fun with this interesting character.
Yeah. I expected his part to be bigger than it was.
Right?
And then all of a sudden he gets shot in the head, and I'm like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah. And that's good. It lets you know that, anything can happen here.
Yeah.
As it turns out, anything is. Dog eats it, he shoots him, he flies off, and then the dog runs up to them at the end and they drive off with him.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. The last thing I want to talk about is the ending. Like, as we're watching this, we see Mickey being like the pawn of the pawn, right? Like Because Turkish is trying to, he doesn't want to be in debt to Bricktop, so he's trying to do this thing, but then he ends up in debt. And so he's using Mickey as a means to an end. And we only ever really see Mickey in that way throughout the movie. Like, he gets screwed over and then his mom dies. And it's just over and over again. He's kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? He's an afterthought, almost.
Yeah.
And then when we get to the end, it turns out he's been orchestrating this whole thing on his own that came seemingly out of left field and takes out Bricktop's guys, and like just he just gets it done in a way that nobody else would ever be able to do it. Like, I think my notes say I never saw Mickey's win in like quotation marks coming, because it's you know, I don't know. It's just, I loved it because I didn't see it coming. It was unexpected. I was wondering how the story was going to end. Who's going to end up with the diamond? Is Turkish going to die? I never expected Bricktop to die.
Right. Oh, really?
At all. Did not see that coming. And for it to have all been orchestrated by Mickey was top notch. Top notch.
Because that's the thing with Bricktop. Like, he's set up as so awful from his very first introduction, and then every scene after that is basically reminding us how awful this character is. Like, well, he has to die.
But
he
he's
has to.
Set up
if this
as
is
being in control of everybody. Like, everybody is bending over backwards to bow down to this guy. So I didn't see any of our players being able to step up.
If this was going to get away with being a crime comedy, you can't let the awful person win, which is then the reverse issue with that finale, and the film in general is it's just so cavalier about death and maiming and blood and violence and so on, and the death at the end where everyone dies, everyone's shot, and the travellers have disappeared off, and there's a number of people buried on the land somewhere. Bit weird. But just as it goes through, and just people are constantly being killed in public, run over on the road.
I did notice that there doesn't seem to be any sort of actual law enforcement in this town.
Yeah.
Which is a bit weird. And,
you know, the guy gets a sword through his chest. How does that happen in that accident? That doesn't happen in that accident. And it's almost... Fight Club was cavalier with the violence because it wanted to have a point about the violence. Whether it was that the violence was good or bad is something we debated.
Right.
This doesn't have a point about the violence. It just wants it on screen. It just wants people being shot and lots of jokey jokes about guns.
Yeah, this is violence for the sake of entertainment.
You know, as we've talked about and had stuff in the news recently over here, like, guns are not hugely prevalent in this country. There are not many guns. They're very heavily licensed. Licenses only last for a handful of years and are checked up regularly. Guns can be taken off you. Gun crime is not a thing over here. And this seems to want us to believe, oh, no, actually everyone has a gun and is shooting each other.
Well, not necessarily, because Saul and Vinny went through a lot of work to get their replica guns.
Yeah.
With blanks.
Those two characters. From Boris, who had a lot of guns and was selling them. And
okay, fair enough. But this is also a movie about the crime underground, and I imagine if there are going to be people who have guns, those are the people who are going to.
Yeah, it feels less like a British film. It feels more like a US film.
Okay.
When you start introducing guns as the sort of standard method of violence. And that was one of the things with Lock, Stock that we didn't talk about, but that sort of helped it was not many people had guns, and when they had guns, it was an air rifle, or it was like a massive shotgun, or like a sort of big machine gun thing from the war. You know, it was these random things that they've managed to get at some point. So,
okay, I understand your point.
Thank you,
but it doesn't change. This movie was delightfully chaotic, and it kept going, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and then we got to the end, and It was nice. It tied everything up in a bow, and I like that we could take something so chaotic and put a bow on it at the end.
Right.
Like, I do enjoy that because I hate like just leaving dangling threads, and they didn't really do that here. Like, he gave us something for every storyline, every character.
Okay.
So I liked it.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Good. I think it's a shame because it's so well made, and then it just doesn't hold it together. That last bit, if it delivered on that, I'd be so like, oh yes, this is amazing, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
But it just goes to a place of, oh no, the dog's eaten the diamond and run off, and then he shot someone by accident. It's almost that everything up to then was deliberate. Even the incompetence was they happened to run over the wrong person and then see someone else with a suitcase, but then there's no money in the bookies, and it's sort of escalating incompetence and japes.
Right.
And this was just dog eats it and runs off.
Random
It's
happenstance.
so easy. It's high school writing,
Aw. Well, you know what? There are some very entertaining high school writers out there.
Okay then. Okay.
So this movie
school-
was entertaining.
High school movie writing is to movie writing what high school football is to football?
I'm not going there.
Okay.
All right, what are we watching next?
Right, so we need to decide what we are watching next week.
Mm-hmm.
This was a recommendation. I think a recommendation for me, to be honest.
Yep.
So we now need to recommend a classic. We need to pick something deep and meaningful, worth talking about. So I'm going to hit the random classic button.
Ooh, My Fair Lady just came out on Netflix over here. Have you ever seen My Fair Lady?
I haven't seen My Fair Lady.
Oh, does that mean that you have to be the fanatic?
It does. It does, because I've never actually seen it. I don't think, anyway.
Well, crap, that means I have to, not like it.
Hey, I had to do that with The Wizard of Oz. So... Oh, no, you did that with Wizard of Oz.
No, I did that
What
with
did
The
I do
Wizard of
that
Oz.
Oh, Howl's Moving Castle. That was it. Yeah, no, that was sad. In fact, no. Let's take this back. I had to do this for Snatch.
Snatch was... Never mind, I can't say... No.
Okay, so the next film is going to be My Fair Lady, 1964.
Yes.
And I'm going to be the fanatic.
Yes, it's a musical.
Ugh,
Did you know that?
Musicals suck.
You like musicals.
I do like musicals. Film. Who's it starring? Oh, Audrey Hepburn and Rex Harrison. Whoa, seriously? I think you've got the easier end of this.
This is going to be amazing. Oh, I'm so excited now. I literally, it showed up on Netflix the other day, and I just started watching it. Just I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid, and I loved it back then, and I still sing all the songs. And so I just pressed play and started watching it, and my husband promptly left the room.
What would I know from it? Give me that thing.
I could have danced all night. The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plane.
If you can whistle it, I can sing it. Try that.
I no.
Because I was really excited there because it said, Julie Andrews. Oh, that's the theatrical version.
That's the theatrical version.
Oh, man, Audrey Hepburn. This is Pygmalion, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
All right. So, what are we gonna vote on? What's our poll gonna be this week? Is Snatch?
Well, you're really good at the lines about it. I'm just the good film or bad film.
I mean, I was really good at the Jaws one because belly flop or I can't even remember what the other one was, but that was fun.
Okay. We're voting whether this is a wonderful chaos, or
Beautiful chaos.
beautiful chaos, or
You have to give us a family-friendly version of your opinion.
flimsy, offensive guy film.
All right. Yeah, let's do that. Beautifully chaotic or flimsy what was the other word you said?
Offensive?
Offensive. Flimsy, offensive guy film. All right. Yeah.
That might not be enough might be too much for the poll things, but you will get it when you see it. When you see the polls, having listened to this, you will be able to say what you thought of Snatch. And as ever, if you have comments and you want us to talk about it when we get to our episode 10, we like hearing from everyone. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We are at Eloquent Gushing. And you can look up those polls as well, reply to them, tell us what you thought about these films, tell us what you thought about our arguments. Was there anything we missed off? Anything I should have said to Mandy to sway her the other way? Anything Mandy should have said to tell me just how good this is? Any performances we've not commented on? Do you love EastEnders and you want to talk about Frank Butcher appearing in this film? Because it is basically Frank Butcher in this film. And if you want to talk to us, Mandy, where can people find you?
Well, this is currently the only podcast I'm on because Enter the Fold is on hiatus. But if you have not yet listened and you are a fan of Shadow and Bone, please go listen to us wherever you listen to fine podcasts. Otherwise, you can find me at Mandy K on Twitter. You can also find me voice acting in not one, but 2 different Star Trek fan production audio dramas.
Amazing.
I am a regular cast member on Endless Vigilance, which episode 6 will be coming out very soon. And I just made my debut in Starship Excelsior as an alien character in the season 6 premiere, and I'm really excited about that. So you can listen to me not in a conversational podcast format if you want to go listen to those. If you're a Star Trek fan, they're both fantastic.
Nice. Worth doing. Great shows.
Yep. Love them. My mom, this is totally unrelated to any of that stuff, but my mom has started listening to Starship Excelsior, and she's been binge listening from the beginning, and she's only in season 4. And she texted me yesterday, and she's like, I'm really tempted to skip ahead so I can hear you in season 6. But she's like, I'm not. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
She will be delighted when she comes to you, but I
She
bet
will
she's
eventually
enjoying it
get
because
to
it is
it.
really good.
Starship Excelsior is amazing. They've been doing this for, God, I think 10 years, 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's good stuff.
Brilliant.
Where can people find you, Matthew?
And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Matthew Vose. You can also hear our show Marvelous, where we talk about the Marvel MCU TV movies stuff. TV and TV shows and movies. And I'm gonna throw it out here because I think October is a good bet that we do a Great British Baking Show, Great British Bake Off podcast called Worth the Calories, which you should be able to find on all good podcatchers. If you want to hear myself and my wife talking about the different bakes and events that happen in the show each week, as well as us actually trying the bakes, we get our hands covered in flour and go and bake stuff, and it's always good fun. So go and look up Worth the Calories. And don't forget, the first rule of Movie Fight Club is to tell all your friends and family about Movie Fight Club.